Hey guys, welcome to my presentation. This presentation is about the effects of mindfulness on attachment and security, and it proposes a new type of mindfulness-based interventions for people with insecure attachment. So this is the overview, and I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. So mindfulness is defined by the Greater Good Foundation as being in the moment and letting your thoughts come and go, letting your feelings come and go without judging them. So, mindfulness is a state of conscious that anybody can be in. It is simply not letting your thoughts run away with you, not having a feeling come up and thinking about it too deeply, analyzing it, judging it. It is simply about being in the present, focusing on something, whether it's your body, your breath, or what's going on around you, and just letting things pass and flow through you without consciously trying to judge or shape your experiences. Now, what is attachment and security? Every human has something called an attachment style, which is formed as we are very young, whenever our parents or caregivers show love or care or a lack thereof in certain ways. It develops our attachment style, which is the way we relate to, think about connections with others, and experience romantic or close relationships. Ideally, we want to have secure attachment styles, which means a low avoidance to attachment and low anxiety about attachment. Insecure attachment is measured on the two axes of attachment avoidance and attachment anxiety. There are three main types of insecure attachment. The first type is anxious attachment, which is high anxiety and low avoidance. Anxious attachment is characterized by an intense fear of abandonment, excessivity in emotions, and sometimes high intense emotions because they are afraid of being abandoned. Sometimes they can be clingy, blow up, things like that. The second type of attachment insecurity is avoidant attachment, and it's kind of the opposite. It is characterized by high attachment avoidance and low attachment anxiety. These people are afraid to get close or uncomfortable with closeness, whether deep down they want to have that or not. They tend to withdraw, avoid conflict, avoid communication, pretty much the opposite of anxious attachment. And the third type of attachment insecurity, which has been said to be the most difficult to deal with, is called disorganized attachment. And it actually is characterized by high avoidance and high anxiety. So there's kind of an internal struggle in people with disorganized attachment. They crave connection. They do have this fear of abandonment, but they're also very afraid or very disillusioned to get close to somebody. And so sometimes they can say something they don't mean. They can withdraw while really wanting closeness. There's a lot of things going on with disorganized attachment. And while all three of these insecure attachment styles are different, they all present in ways that harm somebody's well-being, emotional health, communication quality, and overall relationships with themselves and with others, whether it's romantic or sometimes close friendship. The first set of studies I looked at were about the general negative effects of having an insecure attachment style. The first one was by Talia et al. In 2019, and they found that insecure attachment can affect patterns of communication. So they found that people with avoidant attachment tended to have more withdrawn, emotionally detached communication styles, and people with anxious attachment kind of communicated in an excessive or overly expressive way, and they weren't always clear with the meaning. And both of these can be problems in relationships because it can lead to a lack of understanding and lack of connection and communication quality in general. The second study is by Yang and Oshio in 2025, and they found that insecure attachment on both axes was linked to lower self-concept clarity and self-esteem. So what this means is that they had a harder time defining who they were and kind of putting together a narrative of themselves as a person. They also found a lowered self-esteem, particularly in people with anxious attachment. The third study was by Corden et al. In 2009, and they found that people with insecure attachment styles reported significantly higher levels of stress than people with secure attachment styles. Anxiously attached people had the highest levels of reported stress, and then avoidant attachment, and then secure. Thankfully, the mindfulness-based intervention they did showed results of reduced stress in both securely and insecurely attached participants. The second set of studies is about the benefits of mindfulness. The first study was by Snyder et al. It was a literature review that linked mindfulness to emotional functioning improvement. This is relevant to attachment and security because attachment and security tends to lead to things like reduced abilities of emotional regulation and self-awareness. The second study was by Mandel and Lip in 2022, and they studied mindfulness and relationship quality. They found that the mindfulness-based intervention led to higher reported relationship quality and better conflict resolution. They also found that something that was especially important was acting with awareness, which self-concept and self-awareness is something that insecure attachment tends to cause struggles in. The third study was by Winter et al. In 2021. They reviewed different mindfulness intervention studies in couples. They found that mindfulness interventions were consistently linked to relationship quality improvement, better communication, and improved overall well-being in individuals. The third set of studies goes over the relationship between mindfulness and attachment. The first study is by Goodall et al. In 2012. They found that mindfulness, attachment security levels, and emotional regulation are all connected. They found that people with higher mindfulness levels and more secure attachment had better emotional regulation abilities. This could mean that these things are linked, and by increasing somebody's mindfulness, it may be possible to improve their levels of attachment and security, and as a result, their emotional regulation. The second study is by West et al. In 2022. They studied mindfulness and emotions. They found that the mindfulness intervention was the most helpful for anxiously attached participants in decreasing negative emotions and increasing positive emotions. This means that mindfulness interventions could be particularly beneficial to people with insecure attachment styles. The third study was by Stevenson et al. In 2017. It was a meta-analysis of 33 different mindfulness-based studies. They found consistent negative associations between mindfulness levels and attachment and security. This suggests that increasing mindfulness levels could potentially reduce attachment and security if the two are linked. So now let's get into this proposed study. The purpose of this study is to compare a brand new mindfulness-based attachment therapy with regular attachment-based therapy alone and reducing attachment insecurity and relationship quality. It is hypothesized that mindfulness-based attachment therapy will improve these things more than attachment-based therapy alone. So here is the mediational model of this study. So we have insecure attachment, the type, as a potential affecting variable. So we have that in attachment and security levels. Because different attachment styles do present in different ways, we want to make sure that in this study that is properly represented. So mindfulness-based attachment therapy is predicted to be positively associated with emotional regulation, which means the more treatments they go through, the higher emotional regulation they'll have. It's also predicted that it will improve their resilience to distress. We believe that higher levels of emotional regulation will be associated with decreased attachment and security levels. We also believe that resilience to distress will be associated with decreased attachment and security levels. So the more resilient somebody is to distress, the lower amount of attachment and security they have, which means moving to a more secure style. We also hypothesize that higher amounts of emotional regulation will lead to higher communication quality and emotional responsiveness. It's also hypothesized that higher levels of resilience to distress will be associated with higher communication quality and emotional responsiveness as well. So this study will include 150 participants with 75 in both conditions. They'll be recruited from university participant pools and advertisements. So to be included in this study, you must be between the ages of 18 and 55, must have an insecure attachment style, which will be validated by a questionnaire. They must be willing to attend all the sessions and follow-ups, and the participant's partner must be willing to attend the baseline and final conversation test, which we'll get into later. The exclusion criteria. They must not be diagnosed with a cluster B personality disorder. Cluster B personality disorders tend to really show up in ways that we relate to others and our relationships with others and the way we communicate. And so it could lead to a major confound where we don't know whether it's the attachment insecurity or their personality disorder that is causing these things. They also must not have any other moderate to severe mental illnesses for the same reason. They also must not currently be in any form of psychotherapy, because if they are, we don't know whether their other type of therapy is helping or it's this condition. And they also must not be currently practicing mindfulness or have extensive knowledge on mindfulness practices. So now on to the methodology. So the first thing we're going to do is assign the participants to each group, but before we do that, we need to do an initial screening. So we need to make sure that they do have an insecure attachment style and they meet the qualifications and do not have any of the exclusion criteria. After that, we are going to randomly assign the participants into either group, and we are going to try and stratify based on the type of insecure attachment so that there is roughly equal representation of each insecure attachment style in both groups. Our first test are going to be some self-report measures on relationship satisfaction, levels of attachment insecurity, levels of distress tolerance, and emotional regulation skills. After that, the participants are going to be asked to have a conversation with their partner about a stressful or recurring issue in their relationship. Their heart rate variability is going to be measured so that that data can be read about how they're feeling physiologically. And the conversation is also going to be recorded so that coders can measure the levels of emotional responsiveness and communication quality they saw in our participants. Next, the treatments will start. There will be 2 90-minute sessions a week for 8 weeks of either mindfulness-based attachment therapy or standard attachment therapy. Both conditions are going to have specialized and trained instructors with similar amounts of experience so that we can kind of try to control for the confound of, well, maybe it was the instructor's quality that changed the results, not the actual type of therapy they were going through. The mindfulness-based attachment therapy participants will also complete at-home meditation practice for 15 minutes a day, 5 times a week, so that they can be continuously using the skills of mindfulness at home and really try to build up their mindfulness levels. At the end of the 8 weeks, the initial procedures will repeat. There's going to be the same questionnaires, and they're going to have another conversation with their partner. Their heart rate variability is again going to be measured, and the coders are also going to have video footage of the conversation to rate the quality of the conversation and the emotional responsiveness once again. And then 6 months after the study, participants are going to answer the same questionnaires for a third time to kind of see if there was any lasting results after the treatment period ended. Here are measures we're going to be taking in data collection. So to measure attachment insecurity, we are going to use the attachment style questionnaire. It is 29 questions, and it can measure what somebody's attachment style is and how severe it is. I also noticed that I misspelled levels, so please disregard that. For our resilience to distress variable, we are going to be measuring it by heart rate variability. A higher heart rate variability is associated with higher resilience and the body having a higher tolerance to distress. There's also going to be the distress tolerance scale, which is a 15-question questionnaire that kind of rates their own perceptions about their distress levels. For relationship satisfaction, we're going to use the relationship assessment scale, which is 7 questions. For emotional regulation, we are going to use the difficulty and emotional regulation scale, which is 36 questions, but we're also going to be using coder ratings for the recorded conversation to measure the levels of emotional responsiveness as well as emotional regulation. And for the communication quality and emotional responsiveness, again, it is going to be measured by coders using the standardized rating instructions. So what that means is there's going to be, this is what it means to have high communication quality versus low communication quality. And the coders are going to be psychologists. So the innovation of this study is one, there is not currently any mindfulness-based attachment therapies, or at least from what I could find. There's also a limited amount of research that focuses on the connection between mindfulness and insecure attachment. There are a few, but there's no studies that go as in-depth to this one as looking at mindfulness and attachment insecurity as the main factors rather than side factors of, emotional quality, relationship quality, things like that. This study is also going to use coder, self-report, and physiological measures combined, which I also did really not see much of in the studies I found. These are the references for the presentation, there is the 9 studies that I found and the other information on the rating scales, the definition of mindfulness, and more things about attachment styles. Thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope you learned something today.